welcome to Digital Shift, also known as Corporate Evolution Tales. Join us as we dive into the dynamic world of digital transformation. From illuminating case studies to captivating narratives, we uncover the stories behind companies' journeys toward digital excellence. Whether you are a seasoned corporate leader or an aspiring innovator, our podcast explores the shifts, challenges of modern business evolution. Hello everyone, this is another episode of Digital Shift, aka Corporate Evolution Tales, and today my guest is Kevin. Kevin, thank you so much for being my guest today, and how are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Mariam, for having me. My name is Kevin. I've been in the tech industry for over 10 plus years. It's kind of crazy thinking about it.
A lot. It is.
I started off while I was in college, I had some internship. I started off in defense. Then when I graduated, I went to fintech, and then I ended up somehow in ad tech. So now I'm basically in ad tech, and I'm currently the senior vice president of engineering at Autogent, which is an ad tech company based in New York City.
Yes, that's amazing. Well, I think each of us has this experience of not knowing how we appeared in this sphere, but it's still great to know that you had this awesome path of your professional growth, and now you basically can you have a team and you know a lot about digital transformation, and that's basically our topic today. So let's start from the basic question that I'm usually giving, and it's your idea about digital transformation. So what's your opinion about it? What is it for you?
Are you talking about digital transformation?
Yes.
It's kind of a broad topic, right? So like for me, like it's kind of unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen, right? So like if you look at my career progression, right? I started off not in big data was not a thing yet, right? So like I remember what was Teradata was the big like data company, and we were all doing that. Then all of a sudden this newfangled idea of Hadoop came in, and then we're all about big data processing and kind of breaking problems into the smaller subsets and kind of going there. And then if we look at more recent stuff, we started looking at like blockchain, crypto, and then now in the most recent iteration, we're looking at generative AI and these large language models. So like for me, I think it's kind of a little bit unpredictable, but at the same time, you can see how each kind of step before it kind of builds up. So like you needed big data to come in. Once you had big data, you can kind of do, like the large language model. Like that stuff was not available unless you had the predecessor kind of trend come in before it. So, I mean, that's kind of my take on it. I mean, I'm not quite sure what is, beyond AI. I don't know what's going to come out, but I can definitely see it being something that potentially depends on us kind of innovating with AI first.
Agree. I think a lot of people are saying that the understanding of digital transformation is really big, and for everyone, for each of us, it's very specific thing like on our field or like in our sphere. And for me, for example, it's a change that is happening, the automation of processes and all that stuff. So you also mentioned about the AI, and I'm usually asking about this to my guests, like, what are your thoughts on AI specifically when we are speaking about digital transformation? Like, do you think is it helping, or is it like disturbing the flow of when we are changing something to better? Do we need to be afraid of AI in this case?
So, I mean, it's a loaded question. So, I mean, let me kind of step back, and then like if I'm missing something, please let me know. I think if we look at digital transformation and how we apply to AI a little bit, I think what happens is we have this kind of like peaks and valleys. So like an example is crypto, right? Like when it first came out, there was so much hype and everybody's going to crypto, and then you had a little like kind of I think there's a kind of a graph, there's like a word for it, but like it went down. And then finally, like you kind of people realize, okay, what can we use the blockchain for? And then like, it's kind of like coming up and leveling up. I think that's the same thing with AI. Like I'm not quite sure where we are, but I think we're on the like hype train right now. I don't know if we're like past the crest of the hype train and we're on the way down, or we're still riding the hype train up. But I think that's where we're at. And you asked, do we need to be afraid of it? That's a good question. I think the answer is, well, for me, I think we need to embrace it. That's one, but we need to I feel like we need to understand it more. Like um, in the media, we can see how AI can negatively affect a person. So like understanding like the consequences and kind of putting guardrails, I think, is needed. Do we need to be afraid of it? I feel like if you're afraid of it, it might hamper. It depends on how you consider being afraid of it. But if you're like too afraid and too resistant, it will. I think that might hamper innovation. But at the same time, I don't think that we should be in a part of like, hey, free for all. I think we should put some guardrails. Like I think the ideas of like putting like forcing like a little like a watermark to say that this is AI generated and stuff like that, and informing the public a little bit more of like, hey, this is not, this is a generated situation. I think that's important, but like, I don't think we should get to the point of like, hey, we should take our hands off. This is too dangerous. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that's actually a very interesting point about having the something like watermark. I never thought about it before because I think what they expect from AI is to bring it to the point that is so realistic, so people are not differentiating. Like even when we are thinking about LinkedIn posts, right? I think several years ago, a lot of people were really sitting and writing their thoughts down, editing the text, etc. Now it's more like giving all that text or draft or brainstorm to GPT thing and then like asking, hey, like generate me a proper post for LinkedIn, blah blah blah. So I think that's the way that like I don't know, maybe people are becoming a bit more lazy with having this kind of support there. But also, as you mentioned, it's more about like understanding how we can use it properly, like to save time but still keep our creativity. For example, same goes with the videos that is generating like even short movies, so on. So yeah, definitely agree, and I think it's a good point to have a watermark there to say like, okay, this is generated but by not a human.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think that's also going to be important in terms of like, if you look at, an example is if you look at like furniture, for example, right? You have furniture that is like a Kia commodity furniture, and there's a certain value placed on it versus like a value that's placed on like, you go to a custom builder and they make a custom thing. So I think that there's some bespokeness that can be added to like not AI that may come into play. Like, oh, this this LinkedIn influencer we know like has a consistency to not use AI, and it's like coming from this person, and like there might be like a bespoke level that's different. So like AI might end up becoming more of like a that's the factory, and then this is like a bespoke level on top of it, not using AI. It doesn't make sense. I don't know if that's gonna happen. I could definitely see that being a possibility.
Agree. Awesome. And when we are speaking about digital transformation, are there coming any specific phases to your mind, like with the transforming anything or like digitalizing the process, for example? Are there any phases that you think about?
Phases. I mean, I don't think I think about any phases except for hindsight afterwards, after it's happened. Because like usually, I don't realize it's something until it's actually happened, and then like I step back and I'm like,
Okay.
oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you kind of look at, let's say we take AI and look at it, right? AI is not, it's not new, really.
Yeah.
It's really old, right? Like it's been around for a while. And so like I feel like there's like a precursor phase where like, it may take some time to get the idea, and then there's this one pivotal moment, right, that happens that kind of looms it up, right, and goes it off, right? So like I feel like there's a clear like beginning, and then there's a clear like, I don't know what would be the good word, but like a pivotal point, like an inflection point that kind of like bounces it up, right? The same thing with like, the blockchain. Blockchain's been around for a while, like Bitcoin's been around for a while, but there was a pivotal point where like it became like the thing. And then there's a kind of like what, like the upkeep cycle. Like, okay, now the pivotal point's passed. This is like the point where like it's kind of in the like maintenance phase or whatever, where okay, the hype is gone. Okay, we figured out what we want to do with it. Okay, it makes sense to this train, this kind of thought process or this kind of paradigm. That's what happens. So I feel like there's three kind of I would bucket into three kind of distinct.
Yeah. I think when we are speaking about digital transformation, one thing that is coming to your mind, as you said, like with these phases, is the beginning, like how we are starting with it and how we are basically explaining or communicating everything to people when we are in front of that big change. Because like digital transformation, again, in my opinion, is about the changes that are happening, and definitely they are touching the processes, and the communication that is going on during that time is so important. So do you think that we should be as transparent as possible with people when starting these changes, or it's more about like just saying you need to do that and that's for a good thing?
This is an interesting question. I think in an ideal world, then yes, the more transparent, the better. But everybody will understand.
Okay.
What's going on, right? So
Yeah.
it's a really this is a tough question that I would say the ideal is to be transparent. What is the answer? I feel like it's probably somewhere in the middle, but I don't know what the correct answer is, if that makes sense.
So you are more about, how to say it, I think you are more about like expecting people to understand that we need this change, but still be transparent with them in the ideal world. But sometimes we just need to say, okay, we need this change to happen in order to improve stuff.
Yeah.
I see.
Because I mean, if you're fully transparent, you're trying to get everybody's opinion, there'll always be some movement that is not against it, and then in that situation, what do you do? It's a good debate of do we move forward? Right now, with AI, there's the debate of let's see, is it called efficacy of AI? What do you, so you look at it, AI has all this data that it's getting from you, and it's creating all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But what the creators that it's getting the data from, what do they get a piece? I think that's a fair question. Do they get a piece of this? Do they get paid? Otherwise, what is the why would they be kind of willing to create more so that AI can enhance, right? So then the question is, what do? Do you stop progression at this point until this gets solved, or you move forward progression? This is a tough call. I wouldn't want to make this call, because I would be I don't know, I could see both ways. It's a little rough, right? So, but ideally, you want to be transparent. You want to be hey, blogger or artist, my data came from yours, and because this data came from you, it kind of created these many pieces, and you influenced this portional piece. I think it should be transparent like that, so that they know oh, I should get I get recognized or something, what I'm saying? Otherwise,
yes. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really difficult to understand that part of okay, how we are going with the change and all that. And when we are speaking about the challenges that are there, with digital transformation and generally with the changes, for example, in your company or in your department. So what do you think are the challenges when we are speaking about big changes?
So I think the main challenges are people are usually afraid of change. And so the idea is to kind of give them, to just kind of explain to them why the change needs to happen. And kind of sometimes you need to kind of slowly drip in the change, right? It can't be all at once, right? So that you might have to do a small piece of that change, wait for a couple months, do another small piece, and then eventually when it's all done, it doesn't look like a change to somebody at all, right? So I think that the fact that it's a big change is the thing that you need to work around. Some people are hey, let's rip off the Band-Aid, let's do it now. And some people are you're gonna freak me out. You're gonna have so much anxiety if you do the big change. So it's basically trying to find that balance and kind of going that way.
I see. What about the challenges that are the ones that are coming with big changes? I think are also related to budget and the thing that we are afraid of with do we need that change? Maybe it will be too expensive for us. So do you think we have that balance of understanding or taking into account some risks before doing the changes?
That's a good question. So, good examples. Let's look at AI. So,
Mm-hmm.
or specifically, let's say OpenAI or Anthropic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, when it first came out, everybody's jumping in it, but the costs were kind of a lot higher.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like what's surprising to me is like, when the hype started to now, the prices dropped dramatically, right? So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I was surprised at how short of a time span it took the cost to drop down.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is a balancing act, right? Like, there's something to be said to be first to market and kind of pay the
Mm-hmm.
first movers fee, right? But then there's also something to say to be like, let's see how things lie out and then jump in at, a later time when it's been vetted, costs have gone down because economy scales have gone
Mm-hmm.
up, right? So it depends, I guess, on the situation, right? So like,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
as a more of a startup, you kind of want to take those risks, you want to be that agile. Maybe you take that, bigger hit. But as like a larger company that is like more concerned about like, the perception and like not making mistakes, I think for them
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like you take the Apple approach. You kind of see that okay, this is where it
Yeah.
is. Okay, now we'll just take it and kind of make it better, but like it's been in the market for a bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. And we spoke about AI, and I think that's one thing, one part, or like a piece of technology generally that we are using. And are there coming any other emerging technologies or like trends that will help with the changes that are related to digital transformation, or generally like in companies when we are speaking about changes in processes? So, are there coming any other major technologies to your mind that we can use and that will support us?
And from like a big level of like you're talking about like blockchain and AI stuff, I am not aware. I mean, AI is
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
multifaceted. So like, there's many like, right now I mean, I don't want to speak, but like right now when I hear people talk about AI, they're literally talking about large language models and
Yeah.
how that works, right? Which is, I think it's a little misnomer because I feel like some people think that it's just being smart, but it's more of like a predictive model of guessing
Right.
what is going
Yes.
to be typed next, right? So like,
Yes.
if we go down to that level, I mean, it's an old technology, but I think more of like of reinforcement learning and the machine learning stuff that is not large
Mm-hmm.
language models is going to be more helpful in the future. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
already been
Mm-hmm.
like, it's been used for a while. Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen it used in all my other companies. It's just the forefront and the big kind of hype right now is the large language models, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
more of the machine learning aspect that are not related to the large language models is gonna be where like the next
Mm-hmm.
big thing is, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what's gonna spawn from that, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
that route is kind of where it's
Yeah.
going to be.
So when I had a guest that mentioned several tools that were so interesting, and he basically put them into criteria like categories, and one of them was again the communication, and he was speaking about Slack and all the integrations that it has that can help with supporting the change, etc. So do you think that, for example, these integrations are really helping with the tools that are used during these changes? Like, is it really important to use a tool that has amount of integrations in it so it can connect basically several tools to it?
So that's a good question. So my mindset is we should always use the tool that is good for the moment, right? In that
Mm-hmm.
case, doesn't necessarily mean that you use a tool that has everything. Now, I can understand why a tool like Slack would want all these integrations, right?
Yeah.
Um, Different people communicate different ways. So if you have all the options for communication there's a highly likely chance that the communication will work with everybody, right? I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I can understand the reason for it, but for me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still under the mindset of like, you should focus on what you're really good at and like kind of hone that down. It doesn't mean don't diversify, but like you don't have to
Yeah.
have the entire world, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to cover everything. Like, I mean,
Right,
that's
right.
the beauty of like having these separate companies that specialize in something is because they're really good in that one something.
Agree. Yeah, I mean, we had this partnership with one company in US that was using so many tools, and they even lost the track of, like, there were several tools that were aiming for the same thing, and they were just paying for everything. And we just came like reviewing stuff, and we were like, okay, guys, do you know that you have like three tools that are for same purpose, and you're paying?
Yeah.
And it was a really like big money that they were paying. And I think a lot of companies have this challenge of like using so many tools that they are losing the track of them, and they are just adding a new layer of the tool in their list of what they are using.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in those situations, communication would have been like the key, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like if
Right.
they had known like, hey, we have three tools and like, this, then there could have been an consolidate, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
if you don't, if the teams are not communicating and there's no like kind of that happening, then yeah, I can
Mm-hmm.
definitely
Mm-hmm.
see like you have 4 or 5 tools doing the same
Yeah,
thing, and
exactly.
it's yeah.
Great. Awesome. Well, I think this will be my last question to you, Kevin, and it's related to the advice. So, what kind of advice would you offer to other people, to our listeners, in order to have successful digital transformation, or generally being able to do a change in their companies?
So that's a good question. So I'm not quite sure my advice would, fit for everybody, but what
Mm-hmm.
I've always kind of done is lean into everything. So if there's a transformation going on, let me lean into it. Let me see what's
Mm-hmm.
about. Let me not restrict it. Let me go in. Now, after I go in and find out everything about it, I might have like some caveats, but like just don't fear it. Just lean in, right? And just find out everything that you want about it, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of my advice. I mean, I understand different people have different risk profiles, but like that has been
Yeah.
kind of my guiding light for any transformation. I was just like, okay, this is happening. I can't do anything about it. Might as well just lean in and just go full 100%, right? That's
Yeah. Yeah.
how I
Yeah.
kind of think about it. So yeah,
Okay. So we need to trust the process.
yeah, always.
Awesome. Okay, anything else to add, Kevin, before we will end this episode?
Unless you have any other questions for me, I mean, life is
No,
full of changes, so you got to just embrace the
exactly.
changes and touches, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like, what I would say is like, even though that happens, you as a person are the one that decides what to do. So just don't forget, like, it's your choice either way. So
Mm-hmm.
um, for me, rolling with the punches works. It might not be the right choice for everybody. And just be aware, like, you're not really forced to do anything that you don't want to do. So
Yes. Well, I think this is great ending. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being the guest today. And yeah, have a great day.
thank you, man. And thank you for having me.